Hello and welcome to some more Star Citizen. Today I wanted to talk about Procedural Moons, their scale, how they've improved, what we're going to get for Alpha 3.0, but also to an extent Procedural Planets of the Future too. This has basically been updated recently in some ATVs over the last few weeks. Alpha 3.0 Procedural Moons. So previously, the procedural tech was cracked at the end of 2015 by the Frankfurt studio, and due to its potential was immediately adopted by the game as a feature. It was pretty simple to start with, just generating large-scale terrain. Evolution to date, though, has been drastically improved. Even from week to week, we can see quite big improvements, where they keep on polishing the procedural tech and adding features like object scattering with rocks, outposts, derelicts, weather and effects, biomes, missions, loot, and much, much more. The visual difference is staggering, though, and that's kind of why I'm excited for Alpha 3.0. The visual on the moons, whether it be the textures on the ground and the effects they use and the day-night cycles and that sort of stuff, all is looking fantastic. Procedural, though, does not mean random. So when we're talking about these moons and these planets, it does not mean they're randomly distributing terrain and stuff like that. It's going to be the same on the client and server. It's going to be the same on every person's screen, every player's screen. It's going to be the same every time you visit or even log out. Basically, it's built procedurally at runtime and rendered on demand, but that procedure does not change. So whenever you go to a planet, that's how that planet or moon looks. It's not going to be changing every time you log out or whatever. The moons, scale-wise, are massive, so they could take you weeks and weeks to explore. In fact, games like Skyrim or GTA are but a fraction of a part of the moon's surface, even in 3.0. So how long is it going to take to travel around a moon, and what's the actual scale? So planetary scale, or moon scale, is going to be like 1/4 or 1/6 between that of an actual IRL planet. I have yet to travel 1/6 of the real planet Earth. Distances in space are around 1/10 scale as well, so when you're travelling in a solar system, it's around 1/10 of the size, like space-wise. It would take days to walk around the moon in Alpha 3.0, and they've talked about the Nox bike being able to circumnavigate a moon in Alpha 3.0 in around 15 hours. So it's big. Very, very, very big. And procedural planets, so how do they differ, and what's the kind of technology procedural-wise? So planets, when they are added, won't differ, well, typically too much from moons, other than having more things, more various things. So biomes and ecosystems. They're basically climates or areas of grouped environment types, terrain, objects, flora and fauna that will be used together in an area to make that area look in a particular way. A moon might only have a single or a few biomes, icy and tundra, for example, where it will look icy and snowy, and there'll be icy animals and snowy plants and that sort of stuff. Whereas a planet is much more likely to have more biomes and more ecosystems in a similar way to which Earth does, because Earth has lots, because it's big. This always might not be the case. Some large moons are going to have lots of biomes, I'm sure, whereas some planets, especially barren ones that are outside of the green zone, might just be desert, lava, or ice, for example. For Alpha 3.0, though, there's only going to be a few developed biomes, well, so far anyway. We're going to see rocky on Delamar, juxtaposed with like mining outposts and chimneys, icy and tundra on Yela, that's going to have like large crevasses too. Selen is much more similar to Earth's moon, but with small thermal geysers dotted around. Daymar is much more akin to Mars, with a dense atmosphere, dirt, and lightning fog storms. So we are going to get some variety, but just eventually we're going to have these planets and ecosystems where they're going to be quite vast across the planet. And these planets are going to be massive. So ecosystems will control what flora and fauna are there, and what terrain types and features, and as well as weather. Weather's going to be controlled by these as well. So we're going to see various weather systems on planets and moons. Even in Alpha 3.0, we should see some different weather types, like those lightning fog storms on Daymar. And some of them are going to be benign, whereas other environmental effects are going to be extremely dangerous. They are currently working on these much more developed ecosystems as well, and their assets. So we're going to have lush savanna and forests and jungles, flora and fauna, bodies of water, oceans, and lots of diversity between these different biomes, and crazy stuff could be happening there as well. So what about cities and procedural cities? So procedural cities have had some work, and planets, I suppose, are much more likely to have cities. In the shorter term, though, in the standard system, we are going to get a fully fleshed out ArcCorp, Crusader, Hurston, and Microtech in the after 3.0. Procedural cities, though, are going to be used to generate physicalized massive cityscapes. These could potentially be explorable and content-rich too. At the very least, they will look great and allow for giant populated city planets to exist like Earth and Terra. Their current thinking, though, is that when landing on those planets or large populated zones, you'll request landing from orbit and you'll have a flight corridor that you need to stay within, and deviating from that could get you fined, and then an autopilot could take control, or ground defences might blow your ship up. But I suppose the best thing possible would be if they allowed fully explorable and landable planets, but that might be a bit beyond the scope of what we can have in computer games at the moment. In 3.0, though, you will be allowed to land anywhere on Moons and Delamar, that they exist there, and they are going to flesh out more as we get more and more patches. So, planets are bigger. Moons are really, really big, but typically planets are bigger. Potentially, there are going to be hundreds of hours of play on each moon or planet. Some players might not leave a system much, if ever. We only have one system, Stanton, in 3.0, and again, only moons will be landable on. But the idea is that moons and planets will have a huge amount of tangible gameplay, from missions to exploration, from derelicts, to just literally going and doing your own thing and doing stupid stuff, to eventually base building in the far future. Now, some other general things that I keep on getting asked questions about, like an FAQ, I suppose. Gravity and atmosphere will have an effect on ships, and planets and moons will have varying gravity and atmosphere kind of things to happen on them. As we move forward, gravities of planets, moons, and that kind of astral body will be more diverse. Planets will rotate on their axis, and for proper real night-day cycles, the sun is an actual object that exists, and you'll revolve around that. And moons will revolve around their parent planet in regards to orbiting the sun. So the tech is all there for 3.0 and the orbiting tech, but I'm not sure if it's going to be an Alpha 3.0 release or not. I'm not sure if they're willing to block us there. They haven't mentioned it that much other than it being kind of ready. Some objects will be visible from space to ground, and on ground you'll be able to see planets and moons and stations, with them also being tangibly actually there and visitable. There are no loading screens or cutscenes. Transition from space to ground and back again is seamless. Planet and moon's terrain is going to be generated as you approach the surface. Levels of detail will make it so that it blends in from ground to space quality-wise and looks good. Object containers are a major part of Star Citizen's future, the basis of which is set up in Alpha 3.0, but from 3.1 onwards, we're going to start to see the object container streaming system, which is going to allow for a lot more performance and a much more efficient way of dividing up what needs to be rendered by players and what does not, basically allowing for much higher quality areas with less resources and more players in areas when combined with the network code. So, though in 3.0 textures will still be streamed and planet surfaces will still be rendered on demand, and there are a lot of optimizations going in too, which could see a larger player count, but we'll have to wait and see. I suspect that will be based on testing, but for the future they want to get all players into a single shard using server meshing, so that effectively all players will be on a single server, although we're not sure how many players will be able to be in a very small, tight area, but we will have to wait and see. Object container streaming, though, is essential for that. Planets and moons will have artists handcrafting parts of them as well. It's not going to be entirely procedurally generated. This can be placing or changing your ecosystems, reshaping terrain, whether it be large or small scale, placing objects, missions, buildings, whatever. The terrain and objects that they've built for Procedural Moons is vastly reusable as well, so they can change colours, shaders, textures and other parameters to reuse these assets, potentially across hundreds and hundreds of planets. And these building blocks allow them for much more rapid creation of systems and planets and moons now moving forward. As they increase their asset library, they will keep on creating more and more ecosystems, objects, rock types, outposts, flora, fauna, and we're going to see much more diversity and quality of these procedural objects, planets, moons, and all that jazz. Nothing is a background asset either, so as I said with the stuff in space, if you can see it, you can go there. If it's on a planet and you can see it, it's like a vista in the background, a volcano or whatever, it exists, and you can try and travel to there. In 3.0, we're going to have a large amount of tangible gameplay and exploration of moons from every update there forward as well. We should see more gameplay and content going forward, and the Delta Patcher being in as well means we should have, hopefully, much more rapid content. Vehicles on the ground as well. There are going to be various vehicles to use in 3.0 on the ground, the Dragonfly, Nox bikes, the Ezra Rover, probably the Grey Cat buggy, Some ships might not be able to enter certain areas. There might be environmental hazards or static defences possibly, or a mission reason why you can't bring your ship directly and land it, so you'll have to land nearby, and they suggest you use one of these vehicles. In the future, there are going to be tanks, tracked vehicles, and lots more vehicles in general. In fact, it's hinted that the next concept cell will be a buggy. I suspect that because ground vehicles and exploration of moons and planets is a heavy focus at the moment, there was a tweet in a similar style to the Eclipse cell with the word tumbrel, which is defined as a two-wheeled cart or wagon, typically designed to be hauled by a horse or oxen. For me, this says this vehicle is some form of workhorse vehicle, but we will cover that once we know more. Every month we give away a ship. For July it's an Ox Q. All you need to do is be subscribed to my YouTube channel and comment on one of my Star Citizen videos during that month. Do you have any questions about moons or planets or Star Citizen Alpha 3.0? Do you have any questions for me or about Star Citizen's development in general? A special thank you to my Patreons who allow me to create the amount of content I do. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon, there are links below, as well as links to pretty much everything else that we've talked about. I still have got a bad cold, which is migrated to my sinuses, so if you think my voice sounds different, it's because I'm in pain. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the verse.